The invoice settings allow us to change the way that our invoices are created within Salesforce. The first section here is related to the status we submit the invoice into Xero with. Because we have all three options selected in this box, it means that when our users go to create an invoice within Salesforce, we allow them to create draft invoices, we allow them to submit invoices for approval, and we allow them to create approved invoices. If we did have all three of these enabled, this is how it would look on the invoice page, where you can see that we're allowed to create draft invoices, we're allowed to submit invoices for approval, and we're allowed to create approved invoices. If I change any of these settings, for example, I'll take away the ability to create draft or submitted invoices, you'll see that in our invoice, we can now only create approved invoices. This will change depending on your needs, but remember this is a global setting, which means that if you allow draft invoices to be created or submitted invoices to be created, that applies for all users that are creating invoices from within Salesforce. The next options relate to invoice line item settings. You can see that with both of these options disabled, if I go into a new invoice, that our sales account and that our tax rate are not editable. These options would be set within Xero against the product line item in terms of which sales account it should default to and that sales account's default tax rate. If you wanted users to be able to edit the sales account, you can enable this option. You can now see in the invoice I'm allowed to change this account for every line item that's in the invoice. I'm still not able to change the tax rate unless I allow that through the configuration page. You can now see I can also change that tax rate. Just a note, if you are disabling these options and not allowing your users to change them, that you should make sure that all of your items and products within Xero have default sales accounts allocated to them, and those default sales accounts have tax rates allocated to them as well. The last option on this page is around stock and inventory settings. If you're using Xero to track your inventory and your items, you can enable the show stock number for tracked products on invoices feature. This means that any items you've brought over to Salesforce from Xero will show on the invoice page with their current stock level. You can see in this example that I've got some premium blue chairs that I'm asking for 100 quantity of. When creating the invoice, we're checking the stock quantity and we can see we've only got 90 stock on hand. If I want to adjust that quantity, I can click the edit button in the invoice and I can reduce the quantity to my desired number. You can now see that we are showing that that is in stock and we have enough on hand to fulfill this invoice. Depending on your business's use case, you may still want to create that invoice within Xero. If you do, please note that you can only create a draft or a submitted invoice in Xero if you don't have enough stock to fulfill the invoice. You can see if I try to create an approved invoice that we get an error message saying we only have 90 items available to sell. That being said, our final configuration option on this page will allow us to create an approved invoice from the Salesforce side. Please note that it just creates the invoice on the Salesforce side and it will not sync to Xero until the quantity is higher than what you're asking for on the invoice. If you do enable this option, just note that in any type of debug log or in the last 10 sync section on the home page, it will show that there's errors with your sync. These aren't real errors, they're just errors from Xero saying that you cannot create an approved invoice if you don't have enough quantity. We recommend you keep this option disabled and only allow your users to create draft or submitted invoices if you don't have enough quantity in stock.